Thank everybody for attending today's meeting. Today being September 27th, 2022. Time is 10:06. I'd like to call this meeting to order. That we will do a roll call.
Yes, sir. Good morning, everyone. Director Emerson?
Yes.
Thank you. Director Odell? Director Stone? Director Lockett? Director Lockett? Director Adams? Director Robinson?
Here.
Director Leggett?
Present.
Director Taylor?
Present.
And Chairman Cody?
Present.
Chairman, you have a point on today's meeting.
Thank you. Today's agenda, I'd like to thank the public, our community involvement, all our staff, and our board members.
Join the meeting.
This time, I want to go into our presentation. We have a presentation today by Mr. James Ritchie.
Chairman, if I may, I'm sorry. Chairman, if I may, staff is requesting that a possibility of amending the agenda to add an executive session before adopting today's agenda.
All right, we will add a
Motion. I'll make the motion.
second.
Thank you.
You have a second?
I'll second
Thank you. All right,
Now do a roll call vote.
yes.
Okay, this is to amend today's agenda to include an executive session as needed. Okay, and 2/3 of a vote. Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Butler. Director Emerson?
Yes.
Director Odell? Director Stone?
Yes.
Director Lockett?
Yes.
Thank you. Director Adams? Director Robinson?
Yes.
Director Leggett?
Yes.
Director Taylor?
Yes.
Chairman Cody?
Yes.
Chairman, motion passed.
Thank you for that. Now we'll be moving on to our presentation, and I'd like to introduce James Ritchie.
Thank you very much. I am with Whitman Record Associates. I'm here to help you with your transit development plan and comprehensive operations analysis. WRA is a firm with about 800 transportation and building professionals. We're actually out of Baltimore, although I work out of Marietta. Now, I come to the transit industry starting as a bus driver at the University of Virginia. Then to Duke Power Company in Durham, where I was supervisor of transit operations. Then NCDOT, Winston-Salem Transit Authority, where I was a general manager of a transit authority similar to this one. Then Triangle Transit Authority, Research Triangle Park, where I was again a general manager of a similar transit authority. Then 10 years working for Governor Perdue in the Georgia Regional Transportation Authority, and did the express bus service in Metro Atlanta. Now I say all that because, I started driving a bus a long time ago, but I know a little bit about how to put transit service plans and operations together. I've also worked through some hard times, either budget or operations times, in trying to manage a transit system. And I see you all are in similar challenge right now that I really want to talk about. Now, we're going to have some really good long-term ideas for transit across this whole community. I really regret that the first time I get to talk to you today is because we've got to whittle back service a little bit right now, so it's operationally dependent. But not too distant future, with your staff's assistance, with the bus operators in the community, we'll have ideas for how we can grow the service into the future. So let's first see if I am capable of running a clicker. I'm not.
Richard, hit the side switch and make sure, it's clicking out.
Clicking now, okay.
Jim, I got a quick question, but how are you related to are you guys the same firm that we will be using for the big project that we're working on?
So, WRA is the firm that was selected to do the comprehensive operational analysis transit development plan, which is really that service, shorter term service piece, route analysis, that sort of thing, and a lot of what you're going to hear about today. But Jim's reference to a longer vision is we're very fortunate because we have our master transit plan ongoing at the same time that Nelson Nygaard.
Okay.
And we have brought together both the zero emissions bus plan, the master transit plan, and this team. They meet regularly. We coordinate all three efforts and are integrating all three efforts regularly. And it's also brought us some real economies and efficiencies around public engagement and those kinds of things that every plan would necessarily involve some of. We're bringing all that together. So one, we're not overwhelming folks with information, and we're doing it in a time needed to interact in these very important processes and see their input. But Jim's work and the work of the master transit plan, the WRA work and the work of the master transit plan are fully integrated right
Okay.
now.
Cool, very cool.
Now, Nelson Nygaard, as the master plan consultant, somebody we work together with all the time. And one of the team members or a group of the team of Nelson Nygaard was a firm called Kinetics Transportation. They were out of Atlanta. They did my express bus plan for the Georgia Regional Transportation Authority. So we all work together, know each other well, and are absolutely working together as a team. So when we run transit service, we really make a promise to our customers that we're going to connect them to opportunities. We're going to be time competitive, that we're going to be affordable, that we operate all scheduled service. We don't miss trips because it leaves people standing on the corner. We want to be on time. We want to respond quickly. When we have an accident, we've got to be able to get something out there quickly so we take care of our customers. And we always want to make sure our operators are really qualified and friendly. Now, when we dispatch our transit services, we want to make sure that all service is scheduled with the same bus operator every day. There's a bus operator for every run, and there's no open runs. Unfortunately, that's not the situation you're in today. There are a lot of open runs. Yes.
What does that mean?
The bus is here and not out on the road, is what it really means. An open run is that we miss service on the street.
And just a quick reminder for the board, we got to this challenge that we have because one, the bus operator shortage issue that many of our peers are experiencing all across the country. And some of this same issue that we're going to be talking about here today in a little bit lesser levels is something that our peers around the state of Georgia are experiencing. Ours is exacerbated a bit further, not only by the bus operator shortage that we have, but in addition, our imposing the safety regulations that are necessary around the 10, 12 hours service limitation, which is absolutely necessary for safety, but also means that we're running, again, less service out there and fewer operators. You put all those things together, and it really has created a situation that means we're going to be talking about this temporary service modification that I've mentioned to you both in snapshots on Fridays, but also in the committee meetings leading up to this. And it's to bring service reliability back as we begin to build back our system to the more aggressive, more robust levels of service that we all want to see, more service. And that's what Jim was referring to earlier as well.
So when we dispatch, really, the dispatchers come in the morning and they have their list of runs that are to go out, and they have drivers to fill those runs. Normally, we've got all the runs filled, and we've got an extra list of 3 to 5 drivers, 5 to 10%, that are available if somebody doesn't show up, which unfortunately happens from time to time. They oversleep, or if we have some other occurrence. And that's what your extra board is. And then your other real thing that you use to keep service on the street is your day off drivers. You call them regularly. hey, I need some help, come on in and work some extra hours. And as long as they're within their limits of hours they can work, they'll come in and work with us. Now, other real thing that we've got to have is adequate staff to do retraining and to do progressive discipline. And that's one of the real challenges when you're real short of staff. You kind of have to look the other way sometimes when you like to do things or appropriately do things. And then keep overtime at about 5%. Now this, and you're going to have to go ahead and hold it, I think. There we go. This is a graph that shows the number of hours missed during August. And I've color coded it by day of the week. So blue is weekdays, green is Saturdays, yellow is Sundays. On a weekday, we have 433 hours of operation, a little bit less on Saturday and about half on Sunday. And you can see one day, one Saturday, we missed almost 45 hours. About 15% of the service never left the garage. And so customers were left on the street, not knowing that when the bus was coming. You'll also see generally a little bit increase in that. And I would bet that September maybe is even a little worse than what August was. Now, where you really want this graph to be on a regular, everyday basis is everything negative. We should not miss any service, and we should always have a few drivers available for emergency. And that's not where we are. This just tells me we got a real problem, that we're not meeting our promise to our customers. So what happens when we miss service? For our customers, they have to wait for the next bus, or they have to call that other alternative. They're late for work. They have other costs. They're frustrated. And bus customers are motivated to go find other alternatives. And ultimately, if we have a really undependable service, we drive customers away. They say, I ain't using that anymore. I'll go find something else. When we're short-staffed like we are today, there's real team impacts as well. They're dealing with customers that are not happy campers. They're overworked. They're working more hours than they would really like. And there's no retraining opportunities. And ultimately, you say, hey, I can go find something better than this. And then which only exacerbates our problem. What are our recommendations to you? First of all, do what your staff is already doing, really monitoring the situation. I was very impressed with the level of data that I was given that showed the number of missed trips. Nobody's putting papers over to the side and not putting them on the list. They're really good record keeping, but it also shows we got a real problem. We already are, but we got to figure out how to expand recruiting new operators. Internal incentives of some sort, maybe job fairs, expand the search areas, what we found in other places. Penn State is a university that I have been working with, and that bus system was down about 25%, and they really expanded their reach into rural Pennsylvania. Was the only way they could get their rosters filled.
Jim, I want to mention with that in particular for our board and for the public that's listening to this. Of course, we already know about the incentives that this board has approved that we're offering. In addition, we've mentioned to you in the last few meetings the initiative that we have with the Department of Labor. And there's two pieces of that that are going active, actually went active this week, that we expect to see some real return from. The first is we're working with the military installations around us and military installations that they have active relationships with in their transition assistance programs, their TAP programs, so that we're starting to pull those military folks that are retiring and that would be well suited and would enjoy an opportunity like this. So we're really focusing, we've got a strong military focus right now. The other piece that we're doing that Jim just mentioned is they are looking for opportunities for us to identify folks who may already be engaged in these kinds of jobs, but in areas of the country that are north of here and are looking to retire now and come south. And we want to try to pick them up as they're making those moves, those relocations for their retirement, and see if they're interested in part-time or other opportunities and they already have some of the skill set. So those are things that we are, so expanding the search area and this focus on military recruitment is something that we have actively underway right now. Yes, Director Stone.
I received an email from a constituent in Arsley Park saying that he noticed that the differential in pay between Savannah and Charleston's bus operators was significantly different. And he wanted me to bring that to the forefront for discussion. I mean, I have not researched it, so perhaps I'm not as well versed on this as I should be, but it just, he asked me to ask the question.
I think when we were in our union negotiations, the pay that we were negotiating at that point was very, very competitive, correct?
Yes, it is compared to many of the agencies that are locally within our region, and CAT is on the upper tier.
So we looked at that as a part of during the union negotiations. Of course, you know that did not conclude. And so I think that that's the notion of what that pay is will be, well, obviously accomplished
to me-
in a negotiation.
And I did not want to sound combative, but to me, it's my understanding that the cost of living in Charleston is also more expensive. So I would imagine, that if we got to keep things even, but I don't know. I don't live in Charleston. Used to have family there, but they're not there anymore, so I don't have any comparison.
We'll check the specific number and get back to you, Director Stone, their number compared to our
Right,
number and
yes.
what our number may be after, in a.
And I'll
negotiation.
give you his contact information.
Okay.
And you can.
Sure.
So, Faye's exactly right. Those are the things that are going on. I did mention the two areas that I had found in my past history that I really could recruit is out of the military. And I got almost all of my operators from Philly retiring from SEPTA or from Maryland Transit Administration retiring there. And I think we just need to figure out how to do further outreach to those systems. But unfortunately, in order to get dependable, right now we got to suspend some service. We have got to be able to tell customers these routes are not going to run. We don't have enough operators for them, and that we will return them when we do have enough operators. But having kind of the roulette wheel rolling, and sometimes you get service and sometimes you don't, that doesn't work for customers. We've got to do some temporary service suspensions.
Use routes. I mean, that Coffee Bluff, whatever route, I mean, that, when I was looking at that write-up, I mean, that's, and the cost per passenger hour for that route is ridiculous.
Well, you're going to see some really detailed analysis. And
Okay.
again, what the intention of this temporary service modification, and I want to keep stressing it as a temporary service modification, is to bring reliability to the service. So people will know that they can count on CAT to be where we say we're going to be and to get them to the place they need to go at the time that they want to go. And then as our recruitment efforts, begin to see success, then we'll start to add service back in. And we'll also have the benefit of having the comprehensive operational analysis and the master transit plan ongoing to help us as we restore service and as we look at what those service expansions can be. We can ensure the productivity of the routes that are added.
Is it possible to rearrange DOT and take a driver from the DOT service?
Oh, it's way more than just the DOT service, Director, and we're gonna talk a little bit about that. You're gonna see a lot of data in just a moment.
Okay, so our ground rules. When we started doing the evaluation, we've given 2 weeks to come up with recommendations. First, focus on service reductions for routes that have the least ridership, areas where we're running empty buses. Emphasize reductions on those lower areas, but limited route redesign. Just, we don't have time for the public engagement, community engagement for redesign, and make sure that we're doing our best to think about our Title VI populations and preserving as much of that service as we can.
And one of the other things I'll mention related to that, again, because I think it's really important that the public hear this as well, is we've been in full coordination with FTA as we consider this under what's called a temporary service modification. So even though some of the things like public meetings and those kinds of things are not things that will be engaged on this because of its temporary nature, Jim mentions the Title VI populations, and I will tell you that it is our intention, two things. One, there will be a communication strategy, a daily communication strategy that will live with this temporary service line for the time period that it is in place. We expect that to be, as I mentioned in other meetings, around 6 months. And then there will also be an ongoing equity analysis that we will be engaging in throughout the life of the temporary service line, so that that assessment of any impacts that could occur to Title VI population is fully considered, and that we are monitoring and addressing those things as it's occurring if it occurs. We're not gonna wait till the end of the words and then shore up. So I just wanted to be sure to mention that we're being very proactive, even under the temporary service modification flexibility that's afforded to us by FDA regulation.
Okay, so basic idea was go find trips or routes that didn't have a lot of riders on, and see what we could withhold of that service. 3 types of changes. Short-term route suspensions, 3 of them, 4, 11, and 20. And I'll show you the numbers here in just a minute. Second is hours reductions, where we take off midday service, or maybe last trips or first trips that we're not performing well. And then we've got 2 where we do some minor route changes so that we can save a bus in each route. Now, I want you to know that the costs I used here are fully allocated costs from the fiscal 20 National Transit Database. When we do further analysis, we'll use a budget, a projected budget, to do the costs in a little bit different way. But this was so that we could give you an idea of what the costs were on these services. So Route 20, which you were just mentioning, is the route that has real challenges. It's got 19 riders a day, costs $75 a rider for that particular.
That's the kind of
service.
stuff that would make the hair on the public, members of the public's back stand up. $75 an hour. I mean, why are we not putting them in an Uber?
Exactly, and you'll see on that particular one, we didn't make the case for offering an alternate route either. We're just gonna have short-term route suspension until that, and then we have the opportunity to more fully consider that area and any service needs through the larger COA and master transit plan work that's being done. One other quick thing I'll mention here is this fully detailed presentation will be sent out to all the board immediately following our presentation today, and it's going to be posted to our website so that the public has full opportunity to access it as well.
Okay, so you'll see on the right-hand side of this screen just a route segmentation map. And we take the average daily ridership, and we, based upon the activities in each segment, show the rides per segment. I'll give this to you later in our analysis and show you a cost per rider per segment as well. But this just gives us an idea of how unproductive some areas are. But also realize that routes like Route 14 that run every 30 minutes on average are really close by and possible for these customers to use. Then you'll see on the right-hand side, this is your trip data. And your trip data from the full period from March through August is what we had here. And that's the average ridership per trip. I highlighted in red every trip that was less than 10 riders per trip. as kind of the threshold that I was looking at to see what we could cut. You'll see the ones on weekday and the ones on Saturday. Total number of trips at the bottom, and then the percentage that were less than 10. This is a wrap, yes.
Direction, DIR, that's in order.
Direction outbound is 0, inbound is 1.
Cool.
So, and then the trip is the time
That's
of the trip. This service we propose to suspend entirely because we think riders can use alternatives reasonably well. Okay, Route 11.
Jim, I think we have a quick question from one of
Yes.
our board members.
And from Dr. Robinson. Just want to define short-term route suspension.
We think it should be 6 to 9 months will be the period. I don't want to give a certainty as to when the certain date that will come back, because some of the routes may be realigned, we'll have some public engagement, but it's certainly no more than a year.
Well, and Dr. Robinson, FTA, the way FTA defines a temporary service modification is it's a service modification you take under these kinds of circumstances or emergency circumstances. But it's where you're taking a temporary service mod to address a condition like this, to bring service reliability back, and you can do it for up to 1 year. And it doesn't require the same kinds of assessments and activities that normally accompany a permanent service modification. But nonetheless, in our conversations with FTA, what we've committed to doing is this very ongoing and public facing sharing of information and so forth, as well as assessment of the equity impacts over the whole life of the service mod. And our goal internally is for this to be around 6 months. I know Jim's offering a little flexibility to that, appropriately so, but just wanted you to know that we think the hiring efforts that we have underway with the Department of Labor and our own recruitment activities with our HR manager and so forth, that we're going to see that rebound on the operator or supervisor side that's necessary in order for us to meet an expanded, more reliable service.
So Route 11, similar. It's a peak only service, relatively low ridership on every trip for all 9 trips, all of them had less than 10. And there are alternative routes generally that are available. Okay, wait a minute. Route 20. Oh, come on, there we go. Similar, although if you look at the rides per segment in the distant areas, 1, 0, 0, 0, 2. I mean, it's very, very low ridership on this route. And you can see the numbers. The average weekday from the period is 19. When you sum up these trips, they will be sometimes lower or higher. But this is also one that we would propose to suspend.
So when I look here on orange, it says segment 1 ride per weekday. That means one person is using that route in a whole day.
Yes. Now, the technical answer is 1 on, or we count ons and offs divided by 2. So it could have been 2 people got off there, and then we would have called it 1 ride. But it's ons and offs divided by 2 that we use. So this is then a group of short-term suspensions. 3, 3B, 6, 25, 28, and 29. Now, you see the number of weekday rides, significant. These are good routes, generally. The number of weekday hours, you'll see calculated total rides per hour, cost per ride. Weekly trips is the number of weekly bus trips that we provide. And then you see the numbers that are proposed to be suspended. I simply counted up the rides on each one of those trips to come up with the average weekday rides impacted. It's not significant, not insignificant rather, but it's something that I'm afraid we have to do. And then we show the weekday hour savings. The one route I do want to mention is Route 28. Good route, does very well up and down Waters Street. We normally have 2 buses on the route. In the last pick, we had to take 1 bus off. We plan to put the second one back. And that's really what this reflects, is the second bus coming back, but no, it's not. We cannot afford the hours to bring that back. But that's why we really don't have anybody impacted, because it hasn't been running for the last 6 months, and now also still won't be. But those are short-term suspensions. Similar analysis that was done. Let me, though, emphasize here, this is Route 3 out to Pooler. Reasonable number of people that are riding out in Pooler at 36. Not so much in the loop up closer to Port Wentworth, 24 in the airport segment, but the strongest ridership, and this is going to be in almost any of your routes, is in the area closer to the downtown area. You see the rides. Generally, what we propose to do here is change it from a 1-hour headway during the middle of the day to a 2-hour headway during the middle of the day. There are 6 trips that get taken out at midday. And then the last trip, it doesn't show on this screen at the moment, but the last trip is also suspended. Saturday, same schedule, and then Sunday, we left it alone. Route 3B, because it also serves much of the same area as Route 3 does, we had limited changes here on the route to only early trips and the late trips are what were changed. So we still have, again, area closest to downtown with the strongest ridership, and the service generally stays the same, except again, Route 3 will not have as many trips during the midday. Route 6, this is a crosstown route across the southern part of the community. And it does okay. All of the crosstown routes have are lower ridership than the downtown routes. Here, we're going to take 1 bus. We currently have 2 buses on the service. We'll take 1 of them away in the service plan or revised service plan. Still provide much of the same service. We're going to do a little bit of revision along with Route 14, we think, on this route as well. So we keep the transfer point for it. Route 28, I already mentioned, all that's going on here is we had scheduled in the fall schedule 2 buses, a bus to come back to Route 28. All we're doing is we're not bringing that bus back to Route 28. And Route 29. Route 29 is not a terribly good performer at the moment, but it serves important communities. So here we will do a modified schedule, take out some of the midday service and maybe the last trip, but still leave this route in place. Now, one more. Yes.
On something like this, where we see like segment 6, for example, has 1 ride as opposed to the other segments, which have upwards of 60. Would we continue operating segment 6?
I should have put another label on segment 6. It's the Amtrak station. And only 2 trips a day, or 2 in the morning.
Oh, that's A2, the Amtrak station.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that I looked at it and made sure we kept at least 1 trip in the morning and 1 trip in the evening to the Amtrak station as part of at least what I was suggesting to staff to use. But that's the reason you're going that far is the important facility. Now, 2 route realignment changes. Route 12, proposing to cut the segment to Wilmington Island, and Route 14, if we can, We want to try to reduce the cycle time, the time that it takes to go from downtown out and back again, from 2.5 hours to 2 hours. That'll save us 2 buses, or save us 1 bus, I'm sorry. Now, when we cut it that close, we may have some schedule reliability problems, because right now there's a pretty good layover in the route. But we're going to try to cut off the end that's serving Savannah Mall, the loop around Savannah Mall, and try to save enough time so that we can make the cycle in a 2-hour instead of a 2.5 hour. And that provides the same service to customers up and down the line. Again, my only concern is one of service reliability. Let me show you the Route 12. Route 12 serves the community, or served the community of Thunderbolt. That was taken away some time ago and still shows here on the map. But we already have an area where we're not allowed to pick up and discharge. We have a good area across 80 to get out to Wilmington Island. And we don't have a whole lot of riders out on Wilmington Island. And we have Route 10 that already serves Wilmington Island. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't a couple of stops that won't receive service in the future because of this change. But what we will do is turn around Route 12, this area generally, before, and so we can cut 1 bus out of it by cutting out the end segment. And get most of the riders still have the alternative to ride the Route 10 to this location. Summary of where we are. I'm sorry, this is Route 14. I want to, you see a lot of trips on 14, but also look at the average rides per trip. You have 32 down here, 30, 33. You know what's happening on those trips? I'll bet you every second or third day, you're overcrowded. And you actually maybe are turning some folks away when you get at that high of an average rides per trip. And the very strong route all throughout it. This is where I think you really can grow maybe even a bus rapid transit service out of your Route 14. So all we've really suggested doing is out here at the end is the circle around Savannah Mall. Instead, our last stop will be here at Walmart. It's important, yes.
Jim, one of the things I wanted to mention with regard to the Abercorn and Waters routes is we have a meeting this week with the city of Savannah and GDOT. We've got a transit signal prioritization project that GDOT is 100% funding on both of those routes and on both of those corridors. And it'll also help us in terms of time performance in both of those quarters, but we've got the need for them to deploy that. There's been all the background work, the design work and so forth that's been ongoing over the last several months with the city and GDOT. And then what they'll be doing is installing the equipment on our buses as well. So I just wanted to mention that with regard to the performance of the Abercorn and Waters routes.
Great. Anyway, this is a really good performer. Yes.
So Route 14, I think, is the backbone of this whole organization in a way, because it's our most powerful route. And if you look at the numbers from August, it's past our goals before the pandemic. And I think I really like the idea of removing the Savannah Mall loop, but I also know that there is a really high density of stops between Victory and downtown. Some of them are like, I don't know, feels like 2 blocks away from each other. There's just bus stop after bus stop. Is there any thinking into removing some of those bus stops or just putting a sign up that says we're not going to stop here?
Not yet.
Okay.
I think we've got to do a little bit more study. We've also, now, traffic signal priority for transit. The bus is coming down the street and has a little receiver up in the top. It's called, the technology is called Opticom. And it's showing I'm coming to the signal, I'm coming to the signal. So the signal says, oh, okay, a bus is coming, I'll hold up for a few seconds until the bus goes through. Well, a lot of our bus stops are near side the traffic signal. So the bus gets up to the signal, so fooled you, didn't I? And I'm gonna go ahead here and stop. And that's one of the things that we've got to do is as we take away some stops, we've got to move them to far side where we have the signal priority for them to work.
That's cool.
So that's why I don't want to suggest, oh, we go start whacking stops now. I want us to study numbers as well as the integration with the traffic signal.
And then I do know before we opened capacity from 50%, which we had during the depths of COVID, I was hearing from riders that very frequently Route 14 would be full, and that's very frustrating as well. And looking at these numbers, I totally agree with you that if we're upwards to 33, 30, then we are missing people on Route 14. And can you go a little bit more in depth about how we might be able to not
Miss people on
miss
14,
people on 14? Yeah,
more buses, more drivers.
okay.
You know, we can, I think, grab some minutes ultimately out of the schedule through traffic signal preemption and by a fewer stops. But we need to get this route to a 10 to 15 minute frequency, in my judgment.
Mhm.
And
That would be great.
right? But that means really more buses and more drivers, and we're not in a position to do that anymore.
I also know that this has to happen relatively quickly, and there isn't as much of a possibility to go really in deep into the weeds to try to figure out which bus stop or, I mean, it does need to, I think, happen sooner. And I lost my train of thought.
Well, hopefully, I mean, the expectation is our recommendations will, what I really try to do, I tell any client that I work with, that my job is to borrow your watch to tell you what time it is, right?
Okay.
And so I really have to get with the staff and have the discussion with the staff and the discussion with the riders as to what services they think should change. We've had some of that so far, but that takes a little bit of time to work through. So I am hopeful early part of the year, we will have service recommendations for short-term and maybe even some long-term that can be vetted, but we've got to go through a little bit more listening before we're there. Now we'll have a survey for customers that will start also in October. That'll be part of the information that will support the changes. And last, now, when you look at the presentation, I'm going to just jump forward one slide. When you look at the presentation, you're going to see all of these other routes are also in the material. They're just here because I also did the analysis and I wanted you to be able to see them. There are no recommendations on the routes that follow this summary. So in the summary, we're in the proposed fall change, 2,916 hours to be in operation. And we wanted to try to cut close to 800 hours out of the service. Staff has been reasonably successful at using day off operators to fill gaps. And so we ultimately decided, well, we're going to be at 550 hours that we're going to pull out of the schedule. I'm not going to tell you at 550 hours out of the schedule that you're going to have extra operators just sitting around looking for work. We're still going to be really tight, but we should have far fewer of the missed trips than what we've had so far. So that's what's recommended. Expectation is someplace between 6 and 12 months. We're able to do a further redesign and bring back some of these services. I've probably gone on too long, but glad to answer any questions.
Implementation in this too, we're targeting for the end of October.
And how do we tell people about it?
We have a communication strategy that's also being worked on. We've already started communicating regularly with our writers and with the public about service modifications and about service reliability issues. And we've done everything from old fashioned flyers at the 20 highest stops to media interviews to the service alerts we push out to postings on the website to reaching out to particular groups in the community to help us get the word out. We've done all of those things and will continue to do all of those things. And then again, we also are putting in place that we will have a routine communication strategy. I think that's the only way to really do this right, is that we'll have a routine communication strategy that will be leading up to this and then will be in place the entire time that the service fund is ongoing. Along with that analysis of impacts that I mentioned earlier, and continued coordination with FTA as well, so that we're documenting all this appropriately. So when it comes time for trying to have reviews and such, we've got the full package that says, here's what we did, and here's why we did it, and here's how we did it, and here's all the results of what we did. So,
Now, what we've come up with in collaboration with staff are what we think are some good short-term ideas. Now the problem is Ashley has to turn this into schedules, into picks, and Mr. Enoch has to make it work the same, or Enoch has to make it work the same way with operators. This will, I would bet that what I've laid out today, not 100% of it actually makes it finally into the schedules. What we're trying to do is empower the staff to develop these schedules the best way they can around this framework and with this information to be implemented by October 31st. So it's probably still a couple of weeks before we're able to say, here's the route, here are the schedules that can actually be published, because there's a lot of additional work that has to be done from where we are today until when it's ready to run.
one other thing I would mention too is Mr. Dennis and I have had, we have regularly scheduled meetings right now with the union leadership and representing the operators, and we discuss these things with the operators as well. And interestingly enough, the response there has been very favorable, because the unreliability of service imposes a burden on them, and they think it's the best business choice to be able to take your service that you can offer and match it to the available operator in a way that you can be reliable. So
I have another question for Dr. Ross. She want to know, has anyone from WRA has any physically ruled any of these routes?
No, I have not. Will I? Yes, but I have not been out riding the routes yet. I'm relying on the automatic passenger count data from this, as well as the judgment of the operations staff.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so a couple things, and I think on that, to kind of add to Dr. Robinson, it kind of feels like your responsibility here with us today is to set kind of a very high bar and also a very low bar as to the changes that we can make. So we're comfortable making those changes. We can make some fairly drastic changes. I'm a huge fan of frequency, and I'm a huge fan of trying to cover as many people as we possibly can. But if we can't do it reliably, we might as well not do it at all. We have to bring these. We have to be a reliable service. So I think it makes. I think anybody you talk to. I was talking to someone about this yesterday, that we have to make changes. They were like, well, that really sucks, but that's exactly what you have to do. My only concern, I think, if we should watch out for this, is as we are, I think, are we eliminating Route 10?
No, Route 10 is staying the way it is.
So any reduction in sort of the vertical routes is going to put more pressure onto Route 14 as well, because Route 14 is just a well-known, very reliable still.
can we go back to the slide too, because I think this will help the conversation. Go back to the slide there, the one that shows the route, the very first one. That show the routes that are being eliminated and then what it's shifting them over to. I think that's a helpful slide in this conversation.
I guess I just want to put out, I want to make sure that we're protecting Route 14 because it is, and will be even more so, a very important route.
Can you go back? I'm talking about the one that was a bar chart across that showed. See both the changes in Route 4 and 11 and then push more.
And these are routes on either side of them. But yes, absolutely, we're gonna get more folks coming to Route 14. That's also why it was really important that we didn't make any schedule cuts on 14.
Are we making scheduled cuts on 14?
We're trying to make it so the running time is reduced from 2.5 hours to 2 hours.
I think that's-
Now, there may be some trips that we end up running later, or, I mean, you're squeezing something that's already running pretty hard when we do this. So that's one of the things that I know Ashley has been really working on to try to figure out how to make it work. And she's been communicating a worry about, can we really make these schedules? And I have put out some fast schedules before the operators wanted to kill me. And this could be one of them. But this is really an attempt to try to get enough hours out that we can run reliably.
The other thing I would say to the board is, obviously, this is a short term, but a significant difference. I will tell you, the only thing that I can think of that is more impactful is to keep doing what we're doing right now. The amount of stress that's on our system right now, the amount of stress that's on our operators, and the amount of stress that is on our riders is really, it's on a day-to-day basis when you're sitting right here with it. It's incredible. The unreliability piece of this is just really not sustainable. And so while these are hard decisions to make, we thought it's still the right hard business decision, and to do it only as a temporary service modification while we're not going to sit back and relax. We're running hard on the recruitment of operators and supervisors, and on making sure that we're paying attention to customer experience components, and we are paying attention to communications, those sort of softer side pieces of this that are absolutely critical that have got to go along with it, and being very mindful of all the coordination with the community and with our partners like the Federal Transit Administration, that we're being entirely transparent about what we're going to apply. So this is an absolutely critical action though for us to take, and to take as soon as we are ready to put it out there.
You also said that you have a survey that's coming out in October for the bus.
Yes.
Do you have a survey also for the drivers?
Usually I do the drivers by a group meetings. Now, I might not be able to do that this time because of the shortage, but typically I try to set up either before or after shift change and allow there to be direct verbal communication. But we can also do something so that the drivers can give us their. Now, we've already had, Mr. Dumas reached out to some of the operators who really have some great ideas. And we already have gotten a list of, I don't know, 6 or 8 ideas from operators on changes. And those are very much appreciated, but will be ones that I'll put in the next level of work. But the operators are by far the best constituency to hear from.
Can I make a comment, please? This is Director Robinson. I hear what's being said. I see the plan and all this, but what I'd also like to ensure that if we decide on this plan, that once we start working it and it's not working, you'll be as equally transparent to the board and let us know what is working, what is not working.
Absolutely, Director. That is critical, and you have my commitment and the commitment of our entire team that will absolutely occur. As a matter of fact, I mean, I'm glad to commit to that, you know, as I said to you, we're gonna be, as we're rolling this out, we're gonna be constantly evaluating and assessing whether what we're doing is working and any impacts that it may have. And I'm glad to include those reports in a regular, sort of separate report to you so that it's called out on a routine basis over the life of this temporary service modification.
If I could add to that, Dr. Robinson, and is if you can also help guide us with what does working and not working actually look like.
Absolutely.
Because if we have, I would imagine we'll have less writers, less hours. There's gonna be angry people. There's gonna be, I mean, and those all might mean that this is working in a way. It's just that shift is gonna be hard.
Absolutely.
And so how do we think about something like this? What does it mean to be actually effective for it to be working? What do we really need to be watching out for?
I think one of the things that would be helpful, and I'll rely upon you all with your ideas and thoughts and comments on this as well, is to provide you with information that you can use in explaining it to those who will inevitably come up to you and ask you, make an inquiry of you as a board member. They know you're a board member, they're going to ask, to be able to say how much our service reliability has improved, to talk about the, you know, what some of those, to be candid about what some of those impacts are that are the hard impacts that we're managing and how we're managing it, that whether that's a communication strategy or being able to routinely give you updates on hiring operators. I think we can do some of those kinds of things that are all part and parcel of this in a way that you can talk about it with anyone in the public in a way that's understandable, but also is performance driven, if you will, in the way that you're describing now. You know, is this working? And if it is working, why do we think it's working? How do we describe that? The biggest piece of that is going to be that we are where we say we're going to be, when we say we're going to be there, and we're getting you to where you need to go when we told you we would get you there, which is not what's happening right now. Any other questions or comments? Well, that was a lot.
Well, thank you all, first of all, for the opportunity. I would like to be able to return in a few months with some really great ideas. They'll be there, and I think I'm confident. Now, I was general manager of Winston-Salem Transit Authority, similar size. I got to work there. First meeting that I went to the city council, they said, Mr. Ritchie, we're cutting your budget by 25%, and you have a couple of weeks to reduce service. So used in that analysis a little bit like this. We cut service by 25%, and we increased ridership by 10% because we worked to refocus. Now, right now, we're not doing much refocus. We're doing a little bit. But I'm confident that ultimately we can revise your service plan, get more out of what you're doing today, and then be able to expand further into the future. But thank you again for this opportunity to work with you. So,
Thank you.
Our best days are ahead.
yes, ma'am.
All right.
Thank you for that presentation. Although I know not many of us want to hear that, not any of us want to hear what we got to do. But as I've always learned in the past, in order to fix a problem, you got to first identify the problem. And I thank you all for identifying the problem and coming up with a solution to it. And I look forward to our staff. I know you got your work cut out that you already had for the last couple of years. But I feel good about our future. I feel good about the path on which we take it. Like I said, we will solve this problem. Moving forward, we want to go into our consent action items.
Do you want to discuss the individuals or?
Yes, ma'am. I will do that. Turn over to the
You consent items 1 through 8. We're going to do a motion.
do a motion and
I'll make a motion.
Second.
And Chairman, if there's any discussion or if a board member would like to remove an item for individual discussion, we can do so at this time.
I got a question on one. On 3.
Do you want that to be individual action?
Sure. Whichever's the easiest to do, but I got a question.
If you want to go ahead and ask your question.
Am I allowed? I don't know when we're doing this process, okay. What exactly are we changing about the hours? Because it wasn't highlighted. And what exactly are we changing? Is this 12 consecutive hour thing?
It's the 10 to 12, so it's 10 hours in effect behind the wheel, actually driving, and then 12 hours total service. So for example, that 2 hours of flexibility could be for when you're returning the bus to the yard, or when you're taking to a maintenance facility, or when you're finishing a run. So it's called the 10-12 policy. Most of our peers have been in compliance with this for some period of time. And then 8 hours that you have to be on.
But doesn't this mean nobody works overtime?
It's not no overtime, but you want to talk a little bit more about that?
So the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration in the regulation, they've got the differences between passenger carrying operations and property carrying operations. And so your operations of how many hours you can drive, how many hours you're off duty, things like that are differentiated between passenger and property. So essentially, if an operator worked every single day, they can drive up to 70 hours a week. They can be on duty for up to 12 times 7. 84 off the top, sorry, math off the top of my head, early one.
But that's consecutively added up. What if on Wednesday, somebody needs to drive for 12 hours instead of 10?
The way the regulation is that you have to stay between the 10 to 12.
So that does limit overtime. The only way to make overtime would be to come in and work on your day off.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but the overtime would be anything over 40. So there is still an opportunity to get
That's
overtime.
working on your day off. If you can only drive for 10 hours, then you can't work over on any given day that you've driven for 10 hours.
Well, so Director, most of our schedule are an 8 hour or less. So once they get over 8 hours on a regular day, any hours over 8 becomes overtime if they don't make any penalties or infractions. So they can get daily overtime as well as weekly overtime. It reduces the amount of overtime, but it's still available.
But it's still okay.
So we don't ever have drivers who might work like in the morning, take a nap, and then work in the evening. We don't have drivers that work 2 shifts.
Yes, we do have what we call split shifts. And they pull the bus out for a period of time, have several hours off, then return to duty to finish their assignment. And
Is that
assignment,
split shift only 10 hours too?
it could be less than 10 hours. It could be an 8 hour or 7.5 hours total work time, depending on what that particular selection was, what an assignment was. But anytime they work over 8 hours between splits or whatever, they get overtime for that day. So the key is if they're driving more than 8 hours, anything over that will be calculated as overtime pay for that day. Anything over 40 will be calculated for that week.
And that's based on the union contract or on our policy?
That's based on the MOA union and management.
And so how are we changing this policy if that's already on the policy? Because it wasn't highlighted, how we change.
So the difference is that an operator prior to this could have worked 16 hours on a given day. Pull a bus out, come to the garage, and then pull out a second route and work 16 hours that day with 8 hours off. Now he or she would be limited to no more than 12 hours max.
But 2 of the hours is not drive time.
So the from the 10-hour mark to the 12-hour mark, that's considered on-duty time. So if you're driving a route so if your pull-out time, let's say is 6, your 10-hour mark from that would be 1600, so 4 p.m. So if you pull a bus in at 4:45, you might be over your 10, but you're under your 12. That 2-hour time frame gives us gap for on-duty time. On-duty time can be looked at as when the bus pulls to the ITC and they're at the ITC for 5 minutes because they have a few minutes before the next lap. That's not driving time, that's on-duty time.
Okay, but what Mr. Dumas just explained was somebody working a double, right? How do you work a double under this?
You can't under that, but what you can do, when you said instead of 2, so 8, they can get 4 hours. So if someone was on duty, it doesn't matter whether they're driving, standby, or idle. When they report until the time that they're off duty, all that calculates towards time worked.
So you're saying that all transit agencies have nobody working double shifts? In Georgia, based on this? That doesn't sound right.
Well, we did reach out to the Georgia Transit Association and we told our peers in the state. And most of our peers indicated the 10-12 rule was something that they adhered to. And in fact, even in the private sector here, with some of the private trolleys and so forth, they comply with it as well. But we also found some anomalies. But there's still some other regulations. For example, MARTA also has rail service. So theirs was a little bit of a different standard of how they apply. They still have a rule that they apply, but they apply it a bit differently.
Okay, so we're only changing the procedure on this policy.
We're changing the procedure and practice.
But the rest is the same.
Other than the hours, yes. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And so nobody works a double. And they can only work 12 hours a day. Okay.
And they have to have an 8 off, and it's there as a matter of safety.
Right, but if they took 8 hours off, say they worked the morning, took 8 hours in between and came back, they can't do that because it'd be over the 12 hours.
Anytime you have 8 hours off duty consecutive, it resets your clock. So one of the things that we don't do because of a short haul exemption is time logs. It's that a lot of truck drivers do time logs and things like that, but on an ELD, an electronic logging device, when your time is running out and then you stop and sleep for 8 hours, when you wake up after 8 hours of being off, your time actually goes back to the full status. So if somebody works in the morning time until 10 and they take their 8 hours and they come back at 6:30, then they can run 6:30 to the end of the night because their time is back to full, they're back at regular status. They're not at limited anymore because they've had a full 8 hours off to rest.
Okay.
Do you want the drivers to have 2 days off a week?
Supposed to.
They're scheduled 2 days, all of them scheduled 2 days off. They may work on those days, but each driver in their selection have, well, I currently, because we may explore 10-hour work days and that will allow them to be on 3 days, work 4 off 3. But at a minimum, they have 2 off days.
And they can work their day off,
They
as
can.
long as they're underneath the 70 hours.
That's correct.
One other thing I would mention is sort of related to all this is because you may want to just make a comment about your assessment of overtime, the assessment of overtime and how that also reveals some very high numbers that cause us a concern around safety considerations related to this.
In reviewing the overtime data, just in a way of looking for inefficiencies within the organization. Some of the numbers were extreme, which poses concerns regarding insurance costs, healthcare costs, and the ripple effect of all of that. And the important thing that came out of that was that it was very important for overtime to be managed to ensure employees had adequate rest, that their physical and mental state were being considered, those type of concerns. Those were in areas where overtime was simply unreasonable. When you're talking about over 200 hours in a week, that kind of stuff.
And that was just during this time with short drivers, though. That wasn't a consistent trend.
Well, it has been consistent. I came in, well, it was during COVID when I came, but I took a look back at what that picture looked like and encouraged better management of it for the safety of the public, the employees, and of course the budget.
And we've also been sharing this information with the operators and union leadership too around all kinds of leave management, not only that, but FMLA, workers' comp, all those kinds of things. And in fact, had a good discussion about that this week, because one of the things that we didn't have it up here today, but WRA also did an analysis of leave across operators and how we're managing our time and so forth as a part, because that also impacts service reliability. And we had a really good discussion yesterday with the operator leadership around that matter. And believe that both on the manager side and on their side, that we're going to start to see some modifications to how we're managing all that as well.
Okay.
But the issue was more, it's actually not just a recent issue, it's a longer term issue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate all those questions. That's excellent. All right, are we back to Beverly to the consent action items?
Yes, sir. Chairman, if you are closing the floor to discussion, we could do a roll call vote.
Yes, let's do a roll call.
Okay, thank you. Director Emerson,
Yes, approved.
Director Odell,
Yes.
Director Stone, Director Lockett. All right, back to you, Director Lockett. Director Adams?
Yes.
Thank you. Director Robinson?
I'm here, but I'm sorry, what are we voting on?
The consent items 1 through 8. Items 1 through 8.
Oh, okay, that's what I thought, yes.
Director Leggett,
Yes.
Director Taylor,
Yes.
Director Lockett. You're on mute, Director Lockett. Thumbs up, that's a yes? Okay, thank you. Chairman Cody,
Yes.
motion passed.
Thank you.
And Chairman, we have one item under individual action.
All right. Human resource courses.
It's over to Ms. Cutter for presentation.
Okay, the action item that is before you is for HR support services and the need for these consulting services. Well, initially was to primarily address an investigation that had been outstanding since 2019. In addition to that, staffing shortages within the HR department wherein emergency support was needed. In addition to a pending issue that needs the attention of an outside investigator, making a recommendation to procure these support services at a cost of $21,000 and an estimated cost of $21,625.44.
Look, we've got something that we just ignored since 2019.
It was, I can't say fully ignored, picked up, dropped, no action taken.
It was never concluded.
And the complainant was, and rightfully so, deserved a response after a thorough investigation.
Some point, are we going to be given the details of this?
That's why we
Have an
had an executive session, is if you wanted the details of this. We were prepared to at least discuss a preliminary discussion today. And answering questions that we can based upon what we're on the investigation at this point.
Okay, that'd be great.
I think if we've got to hire a consultant and pay that money, I think the board needs to be apprised as to what.
With the executive session would permit that.
Understand.
Thank you.
Would we want to, should we vote on this now or go into executive session? Hear about that and then vote on this?
I think we're doing executive session. Yeah, we can vote on this now. Yeah.
I go to approve.
Executive session.
I guess it's not relevant. I was just gonna say, a follow-up, this question is, we were in executive session and didn't agree that this needs to be done, and we've already voted on it. So I don't know how the best way to maybe continue this till the end of the agenda after the executive session would make me feel a little better. But I'm only speaking for myself.
And I retract my motion and maybe move to continue.
Yes,
Till the end of the meeting.
yes, we're going into the executive director's report. I turn it over to Madam CEO.
Very good. I'm going to be brief. I know that you get a lot of information from me in Snapshot each week, but I will sort of highlights from our report. Obviously, everything that we're thinking about right now is the service modification customer experience. It's the biggest priority in front of us right now, and one that that I'm acutely focused on. In addition, we also had the kickoff stakeholder meeting for our master transit plan. We had over 70 folks in attendance. It went extremely well. Very broad cross-section of the community that participated. We had business folks, we had folks from advocacy groups, and we had folks representing the disability community, we had elected officials. We had all kinds of representation. So a lot of great ideas were already bubbling up in that. So that is also moving forward very well. I want to reiterate again that as a part of that service mod and customer experience focus, we're also absolutely razor focused on the recruitment piece with the Department of Labor and with our own internal recruitment efforts. I mentioned earlier in Jim's presentation that we've got a special initiative right now with the military, as well as figuring out how we outreach to some of our northern states in areas where there are bus drivers and folks who may be considering a retirement move south. And we'd be a great place for them to do that and try to snag those folks.
Does the military still, when you join into the program, advertise at other bases in the state?
They do, and Department of Labor does that. And what they've done is they've actually done a flyer, not just for our operators, but literally for every available position that we have. And it's being distributed very broadly. So if anybody else in the state, say in a different part of the states.
Yeah, like Fort Benning.
Exactly.
They can move from Columbus here.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we are picking up all of those folks, and then of course they're really focused on these transition assistance programs, the TAP programs that exist at the various bases and posts throughout the state. And the communication strategy, again, I want to reiterate how important that is, and what a really great job our comms team has been doing. I know I included in the last snapshot some of the metrics of our exposure, which is great. It's really trending up, but know that we are keenly focused on our passenger right now, and the experience and the how this is going to impact them, with what their current experience is like. So with that, I will turn it over.
I got a question. Because we're back in hurricane season?
Oh, we're gonna give you a hurricane update under other business.
Okay.
Do you want it now? Okay, I tell you what, let's go ahead and do it now instead of holding it for other business. Patrick?
Sure,
It's
so,
very timely because we just had another, SEMA call right before this.
yep, we have a SEMA call at 10. They have moved into OpCon 3, so we have advanced our operating conditions. So basically what that means is instead of enhanced monitoring, they're moving to start working with public services to start preparing storm drains, preparing the line companies to be prepared for power outages. They are saying that it is looking like it's gonna happen more so on Friday and into Saturday than into Thursday. The storm has kind of slowed down a little bit. Right now, we are about 700 miles from the storm. So yesterday we were 1,100 miles. So it's moved some, but not, it has slowed down. They are preparing for about 4 to 8 inches of rain, give or take, in terms of flooding, more so out on the islands than in here, unless the storm drains. Just, I mean, it's a lot of rain in a short amount of time. In terms of wind, they are preparing for gusty winds. Also want us to be aware of tropical storm force winds, so about 35 to 55 mile an hour wind. The way the tornado is going to affect our county, we actually do sit in the top right quadrant of the storm. That is the worst quadrant to be in terms of tornadoes. So they are wanting us to be on alert for tornadoes. With that, I'll be getting with maintenance to make sure that our vehicles are full because of fuel depletion and things like that over the area. Making sure that just the building itself is prepared for the storm, things like that. In terms of service, I will need to get with Mr. Dumas and Ms. Mascon in terms of service pause or anything like that. I don't foresee that happening, but it really is just going to depend on the wind. Those vehicles, when a wind gust at 35, 40 miles an hour hits the side of that bus, it may not look like it from the outside, but from the inside, that driver's holding onto that steering wheel. I've done it, it's not fun. So that's just kind of the only concern. And, the standing water, low floor Gilligs don't do well with standing water. They get all up in the wheel wells. Unfortunately, some of those components can get wet. We could look at possible vehicle damage if we're not careful with some of that standing water. So just those are the two biggest things to think about. They are not saying anything about evacuations. They're not even really saying anything about school cancellations yet. They're talking about just the school going virtual for Friday. So they're not too concerned with it being a big hurricane or anything like that, but they are preparing for essentially a tropical storm.
Well, that'll be our first one this year. So what we normally ask is that you confirm which drivers are going to participate in the event of evacuation. Because a couple of times that didn't go well. And so it was like they didn't remember they had volunteered, and they didn't get their family. So if we could confirm that and confirm that they have a plan of evacuating their family, and that is not when they come back from taking other people. So
in June, we did say our monthly safety meeting in June was hurricane preparedness. And during that, we did talk about go bags. We did talk about a family plan. We did talk about our process of evacuations, just to kind of touch base on that with all the operators. Out of all the operators, para and fixed route, about 95% were in attendance. So the few that weren't were more than likely on workers' comp or things like that. They just don't come to work right now. So the operators are aware of the process. The volunteer sign up list, from my understanding, is posted. People have signed up, so we'll make sure that we go through that to make sure everybody's aware that they signed up.
And that they have a plan to get their families out while they're driving.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Director Bill, thank you very much for reminding us. That's really important. So,
Yeah, because in that 1 year when the whole city had to evacuate, it was
The next SEMA meeting is tomorrow at 10 a.m. We're on daily meetings at this point. So if there's any updates, tomorrow's meeting, I'll make sure I update this to Massimo.
Last item I'll mention before I turn it over to Mr. Dennis is we have a meeting upcoming with the county and city's leaderships together on the T-Splost and, an update and understanding of where we are in our master transit plan process and the connectivity of all of Chatham County, as a part of the T-Splost plan. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Dennis for the service delivery executive.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm going to be brief as I can be. We've heard quite a bit of information on today. So I just want to give you updates on our transit operation for the month of August. Next slide, please. Our on-time performance is about the same as it was this time a month ago. Our fixed route, next slide, our fixed route ridership, it is higher than it was this time last month compared to last month with increase of ridership during a difficult time where we're missing trips. We still have more passengers relying on our service. Next slide, our paratransit on-time performance, it is down compared to this time last month. And our top 5 performers are listed there. It's Clark, Tiffany Grubbs, Teresa Williams, Nicole Lloyd, and Elizabeth Bright on their on-time performance. Next slide. Our paratransit ridership, it is up compared to last month. It again, shortage of operators with more people are utilizing the service. Next slide. Our CAT mobility reservation, it is up compared to this time last month. That's our online reservation. Our water ferry services, our ridership is down compared to last month. However, this is the typical time of the year that it does reduce. So it's on point as to what it would be, not too far from a year ago. Our history of our marine vessel was presented to, it's included in your board packet, but during our committee meeting, our John Allen, our manager of marine services, he did a presentation on the history of all of our ferry vessels. And I think we will get more information on that in the days to come, but that information is included in your packet. Next slide. Our maintenance, it is for the month of August, it is above our targeted of over 12,000 miles between means distance between vehicle failure. Next slide. Our mobility service call, it's above our target. It's above target for the it is above our regular target of 60 seconds. Again, we will almost triple that. But again, it's more calls in. You see on the next slide, more calls are coming in. Not enough staff to answer all the calls so long there, a longer wait period. Next slide. You can see that our on this slide that compared to last month, we're almost 3,000 more calls than we had last month. So we'll continue to get calls, and these calls are a combination of everything. Missed trips, complaints, but the calls continue coming in.
Do you process the data by the types of complaints?
There is in your board packet, there is some information on the breakdown of the type of complaints, a number of complaints, whether it's fixed route, paratransit, ferry service, customer service, it's broken down in the packet.
And you break it down also by route?
I don't know that it's broken down detailed by route. It has the information now shows a combination of all the complaints that came in, but we do have the ability to show, it's not in your report, which particular route these complaints are coming in.
Yeah, because when we were setting up the call center, there were several things that they did that was just kind of a general thing instead of breaking down to tag it so that you could, process the data out more definitively. So if we're looking at it, then let's look at how the process is taken in, how the calls are coming in. And let's add whatever tags we can add so that the operators can take that information in, so we can just pull that information and process it differently. Because it's a database, correct?
That's correct.
So you can add questions to the intake sheet.
Absolutely.
Okay.
No, we can do that. I think that's a really good suggestion. So we'll be sure to follow up on that before we report out at the next meeting.
And do we also log our missed calls? So we know how many missed calls? Because our system is VoIP, right?
Yes.
Okay, so it should, we should be able to delineate how many are missed calls that go to voicemail and how many are hangups. We might not be able to do the hangups depending on how it's set up, but we should be able to do the voicemails so that the voicemails are a point of contact and can be counted in their touch points. Because they have to return those calls, right?
They do.
Yeah, so that will add to the number of the calls that they have. Return a voicemail.
One other thing I would mention to you all related to two parts of the report that you just heard on weather preparedness and then Mr. Dumas's report as well, is that this is how the potential weather conditions are impacting our marine services as well.
Yeah.
The gusts that are forecasted between Thursday night and Saturday morning are ones that could cause unsafe conditions for passengers and crew. So we're going to be monitoring whether we need to shut down operations. As a matter of fact, we were talking today about doing some preemptive communication around that, just to create the expectation that on a dime we may have to issue a service alert regarding those.
How long does it take to decide a boat down?
Director Phil, I don't know exactly how long that I can find out.
Yeah, because you might want to suspend the service depending on how long it takes to tie the boat down so that it doesn't wind up on land.
And I have no doubt our marine services folks are experts at that. I just don't know that number, but they're expert at that. The other thing though that it is impacted that we might have to think about, we think about the active operations, is that this also may impact the scheduled trip to the shipyard of the Mary Musgrave. They may have to reschedule our planned haul out until Monday. The Coast Guard is not scheduled to perform the haul inspection until October 5th, so being the delay one more day wouldn't really affect that, but it may impact the planned work starting on Monday for the 10-year servicing of their drive systems. So those kinds of things are also a part of our assessment of the potential impacts, and I should mention that as well.
Because how many people use the ferry on the weekend? Because with the storm coming, they probably won't, right?
For the weekend, it doesn't break it down. So I that as far as how ridership is on the weekend, our number detects the whole lot.
Yeah.
But we're already on top of monitoring and issuing some preliminary communications around any event that we have to react to.
All right, and next slide, please. Our accident, injury, DOT safety report for the month of August. We had 3 preventable accidents, 4 non-preventable accidents, 1 preventable incident, and 8 non-preventable incidents, 2 workers' comp, 13 drug screens, and 8 DOT physical for the month of August.
Out of the preventable incident, what's the definition of an incident?
An incident is an injury. Let's see, FTA definition is an injury that's sustained on a vehicle that does not cause property damage that interrupts service. So this could be.
So it's a personal injury.
It's a personal injury, yes.
So that would be a workers' comp.
No, but the preventable incidents are pertaining to passengers, not operators.
Incidents are passengers.
Correct.
So we had 1 passenger that got hurt.
Correct.
Okay. What is the definition of an accident is for an employee?
No, a preventable accident is anything that is determined to be preventable that causes property damage. So FTA defines it as accidents, incidents, and occurrences. They define it in 3 different, but they group it as an event. So they're all events, but accidents are basically anything that causes property damage or a major injury that requires transport or loss of life. Thankfully, it wasn't anything like that. A lot of our preventable accidents are very minor collisions. Even a mirror tapping a bus sign, that could be considered an accident because there was some form of contact from a bus to an object and there was some sort of property damage.
How do you delineate property versus personal?
If the bus gets into, let's say the bus tapped a sign, right, mirror tapped the bus sign, and there was
That's
nobody, that's property. If the mirror tapped a bus sign and there was, somebody that fell, then we would deem that an accident because there was property damage and there was that minor injury.
Right, but in this chart, how do you know which accident is a personal injury versus property?
If it's an accident, if it involves just property, it's an accident. If it involves property and a passenger, it's an incident.
What if it involves the driver? Then it's workers' comp?
It's possible, it's not always necessarily going to be workers' comp because of the accident, they may not be.
The workers'
Then
comp,
maybe you need to have a subcategory under accidents, how many is property and how many is persons?
Okay.
Because that's not the same, it's not the same thing.
Yeah, we can make that further, analysis of this.
Yes, so like the preventable accidents would be the total, and then you break it down to property versus personal in the preventable and non-preventable accidents. And then incidents are related to the passengers, right? Okay, and then, and there are no incidents related to property, right? Okay, so those are all personal injuries.
correct.
Okay,
I would kind of agree that this is an important slide, and it's always been kind of difficult to decipher what it's actually telling us.
Okay.
So any extra context, do just like a quick spiel on the bottom, this is what this is all means. And I think breaking it down could also be helpful. It's obviously extremely important, but it's hard to see what it's saying.
and then on comp, that's with loss of work for 14 days? Or is it immediate
That is just the number of claims that were opened
and filed?
in file. So those two, the two for August, those two workers, they could be here or they could not be here. We don't differentiate between the two on this. We just simply are reporting how many claims we're filing for the month.
Okay, so the two from June are not the same two for July and August?
Yes.
So you filed 2 claims in June, 2 claims in July, and 2 claims in August? Correct. That's weird.
Usually we see 1 or 2. That's usually what we see. And they can be very minor. They don't have to be like someone fell and broke their leg or something very extreme. It could be like if someone, if they had a very minor thing that they wanted to go to the doctor for that they felt happened on the job, then when they go to the doctor, we file that with the carrier, but there may not be anything paid out. The adjuster might look at it and say, oh yeah, this was a one doctor's visit, doctor already signed off, no work restrictions. They don't even think this needs to be a workers' comp claim, and they'll go ahead and close it.
Okay, so let's break workers' comp down by whether or not the employee lost time from work
Okay,
and if they did. Because these sound like they might have been no lost time from work. They were filed, they were minor, they were closed, because those are different than when an employee is out for 10 to 14 days and they have to go on comp.
right.
So yeah, let's break that down. So, and then on drug screenings, that's how many screen?
That is our randoms for any pre-employment that we did for an operator.
Okay, and so did you have to fire any drivers because of the drug screening?
We did have to terminate one operator, but this past month.
Okay, so let's break drug screenings down to the total number and then just the number of any people that you had to let go.
Okay.
Now, with our drug screenings, is it an automatic let go or can they ask for EAP?
So the way our policy is written, if there is a positive drug test, they can communicate with the medical review officer, the MRO, that they would like the other vial to be tested. If they don't opt for that, then they've accepted the results, and our policy is if there's a positive result, then we don't do, we don't do EAP, for operators because of the sensitivity in terms of DOT. With all of our drug and alcohol in terms of operators and things like that, it's all compliant. We follow what the DOT puts in their audits and things like that, but I can double check. Let me look at
Okay.
that.
So say you pull a person in random, can the driver say, I have a problem, I wanna go to drug rehab and then not be tested and not be fired?
If you refuse a drug test, then that's considered a positive test. DOT says that if you refuse a random, it's automatically presumed positive.
Okay, but what if they tell you that they have a problem?
So to answer that, if you do it at the moment with your name, or you've been approached,
Yes.
then there is no pass. However, if you say ahead of that, I have a problem, then we will retain that person employment,
Okay.
allow them to seek help.
It's not triggered by the test, though. It's triggered by
By the
the
employee.
request.
So the employee has to come and tell you prior to being pulled in for a random.
That's correct.
And prior does not mean before the random, but days, like before they have noticed that they're on the random
Before
list.
they have notice.
Okay.
That's correct.
And if I may, one of the things that, because I've had the department in my hands since March, one of the things that we're doing is we're revising some of these policies and procedures that are just simply outdated. And we want to use language that the FTA uses so that we're better aligned with what they say. But we're not just looking at FTA, like we're looking at the DOT, we're looking at the FMCSA, we're looking at all of these agencies that govern not just transit, but just commercial vehicles in its entirety. And so accidents, incidents, and occurrences, that's something new that we're going to be doing because that's how FTA defines it. They don't define an accident as a minor or major. Certain things are they're defined differently based on the event. And that's one of the things we're trying to get to. That'll be in the new policies and procedures that we'll be getting to the board eventually. It's just a process of revision.
Okay.
All right, and the last thing I want to make mention of, it's not in your report, but that the CRC services that we're using, we still have one driver available, but we had an increase in scheduled actual trip taken for the month of August. We had a significant increase, so that one driver still helps us out.
And how is that contract going?
It is.
Is it pleasurable? I mean, is it painful?
It is not painful, it's gone fairly well. Their shortages have not allowed them to give us more than one person.
Okay.
They initially started out, we had three drivers or more, but now we only have one driver. So every bit of help we get is a plus.
Okay.
Also have a question.
Yes, sir.
Is there a maintenance report that shows the breakdown of the vehicle as far as fully mission capable versus non-mission capable versus safety mission capable, non-mission capable? Because not just for hurricane season, I'm talking about totally. Because once we get full staff, then that's going to be a very important part, is to make sure we have enough vehicles that are fully mission capable for the people that we have.
Are you referring to both fixed route and para or one or the other?
Both.
Yeah, every day we have a daily progress report from our maintenance staff to show vehicles that are running, vehicles that are down, vehicles that are long-term, short-term service.
And so do y'all have a percentage mark that y'all try to stay above at 75, 8, 9?
I can get that number for you. I don't have that in my report other than the distance on that, but we have to switch out between services, those vehicles. So the miles is what tells on the difference between para and fixed route, and we're always above those miles.
Okay. Related to that too, Director, our electric buses are still off the road. We are still on the list for Cummings to complete the safety recall work on those vehicles.
Correct.
So just so you all know, those remain off the road right now, but they're working their way across the country. And
Right.
we're.
The recall was different than they bus being actually down.
Yeah.
A recall would be safety versus a fully mission capable versus non-mission capable.
Right.
So if it's a recall, I'm more concerned about, like, again, once we get full staff, what are the problems that's keeping us from getting to that 100%? Nobody's gonna ever get to 100%, but what's keeping us from getting?
Very good. We will dig into that further and figure out how to work that into our future reporting as well, sir.
Okay.
All right. On planning and infrastructure development, I'd like to ask our grants and planning manager, Ashley Goodrich, to please offer that report.
Good morning. Our CAT ridership continues to increase month over month for the month of August. Several of our routes are exceeding our key performance indicator of 18 passengers per hour. That would be the Route 14 Aberforn, the Route 3 Augusta Avenue, and the Route 7 Forsyth. We have continued to see passengers per hour increases on the Route 25 Westlake, the Route 31 Skidaway, and we have continued to see corridor service on the 27 and 28 Waters. This side, please. CAT planning items for the month of August are our service reliability modifications and the short-term scheduling calendar. We've been working with our operations staff concurrently and with our WRA consultants with the TDPCOA. These reliability modifications come out in an immediate sense in our short-term scheduling at the planning department level in order to right-size our system service to our availability of operators. This past month, we have been excited to announce that the Garden City State Route 21 Council approval was underway. That will be an addition of 6 new stops on the Route 3 West Chatham in Garden City, but outside of our transit tax district. We are continuing to work with Nelson Nygaard to kick off our master transit plan and implementation strategies. We will be having the kickoff meeting on October 15th, later in the next month. Our TDP operations analysis, the WRA, is currently ongoing. We've been doing a lot of immediate fast work in our segment reviews, route analyses, and ridership. We are quite happy to say with the automatic passenger counting certification from the FTA earlier this year, it's made our data very reliable in the immediate sense, and that we have ridership data as well as systems data for our fixed route system at our fingertips at any moment, as well as for the entire year and through COVID. For this month, in the consent agenda, there was the MPO grant submission for the state block grant Y230 funds. We applied for 3 hybrid heavy diesel buses. We expect to hear back from MPO on that grant sometime by December, a few months from now. It is a local competition for state block grant funding between all of our jurisdictions here in Savannah, the county, and any of the smaller cities that may apply for funds. These funds are typically for roads and bridges, but transit has a category to apply for the state block grants. So we hope to get a portion of the funds that we apply for. The funding stream is available from fiscal year 23 to 27. So we hope to continue to speak with the MPO later this fall to hopefully have an award later at that time. Next slide, please. Congratulations is in order to everyone here for the Garden City Council bus stop approval. That happened on September 19th, and you will be seeing an intergovernmental agreement to the board in the month of October. We hope to work with Garden City as well as GDOT through the winter to spring, with probably most likely a spring implementation for right-of-way permits and construction to have additional stops placed. With the stops being located, we're currently finalizing our cost estimates in conjunction with GDOT in Garden City, and then we'll be working through GDOT for that approval process. Each of the 6 locations are on the State Route 21 corridor, between where our existing service already is. The route itself, our route through West Chatham, drives that corridor every day on a per hourly basis right now. And so we will essentially be adding stops to improve service to that corridor.
I'd also mention here that the partnership that we have with Garden City and what Garden City approved was they are funding the stops, the shelter, the waste receptacle, the bench, the solar lighting, all that stuff. They're funding that per stop. And then they are also providing an additional supplemental operating fee, operating costs for those additional stops on an annual basis.
You said light,
Solar lighting.
so, okay. That's good.
For the board this month, we also put together a list of our discretionary competitive grants and earmarks that staff has worked on through 2021, 2022. We have a variety of grants across our entire agency, such as in our ferry system, our planning department, our operations maintenance with traffic signal prioritization, and continuing partnerships with both City of Savannah and Chatham County, particularly the county, to make each of these a reality to happen.
Are these all the grants that's with MPO?
So every grant that is federally awarded tracks through our MPO as part of the transportation planning process through basically a federal guidelines.
Right.
So they will all be listed. They are all listed through the MPO until we execute and award them.
Right, so all of these grants are all the grants. These are the ones that, this is what we filed and what's at the MPO. This is all of them.
So what's missing in this particular list are our regular portioned allocated federal funding.
Okay.
And the 3 categories of that would be 5307, 5339, and 5337.
These were all competitive discretionary grants, though, aside apart from that. And we reported out on this during the committee's director. And the reason we put this up is we wanted you all to feel again very accomplished, I think, in that we noted that there are, you'll note that there's the ferry dock and maintenance facility grant, which was from October 2017. And one of the ferry boat grants that was from 2019. Those are ones that preceded, and I think there's one of those from 2020 as well. So that those top tier that goes from ARP, route restoration, or areas of persistent poverty. That's what it is. I'm sorry. I'm trying to read the lines from back there. So areas of persistent poverty up to the top are grants that were already in CAP's portfolio. Since from previous administrations. From the paratransit maintenance facility forward are all partnerships that we have sought on a competitive and discretionary basis and been awarded just since
you've been here.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And it's about, total of it is about $12 million.
Okay.
It's remarkable.
So we're very impressed. So can you also, for the next meeting, add the grants that are with MPO and where we are with those grants? And
regular sort of allocations of money that just come to the MPO, we can absolutely.
Okay,
the recurring and ongoing.
yes, and if there's any over there that we haven't started collecting from.
Absolutely.
One thing to add for that particular slide and information for next month's board is that we have programmed some of our allocated funds for future budget years, such as fiscal year 24, and then also perhaps into fiscal year 25. So to quickly talk about the MPO, currently the short-term paperwork at the MPO is from fiscal year 21 to fiscal year 24, and then 25 and on is a long-term, and that also in their calendar shuffles through from long-term to short-term.
Right.
But we most certainly can provide that information.
That'd be great. So now one more question. This ferry dock maintenance facility, when are we breaking ground on that? Because are we gonna be, how long, or do we need to file an extension? Because how long do we get to hold on to money from 2017?
So you may recall, well, I think that the real problem with money from 2017 and those earlier ones that have sat for a bit is that costs go up while the grant does not change.
Right.
FTA doesn't award you more money,
Right.
they don't award you more money for.
Can't do a change order on a grant.
No, ma'am.
Right.
So, but what we are doing on the ferry dock and maintenance facility, you recall that early on, we were told that there were some concerns around grant lapse. All of that has been corrected. And we are moving forward now. So we've got the dedication of the right of way along the west side from the city. That's underway. We already had the dedication of property from the county over on Sunset Island. We are working now on the update of the cost estimate for the maintenance facility itself. And the last I saw, good news on that one was that it was, I think that's the one that was relatively in alignment. We have another one though that's got some issues. I think it's the paratransit maintenance facility that maybe Paris when it's right on the pair. Anyway, they're on the two maintenance facilities. We got one that we've got to work on some additional funding for, and the other is on the mark on cost estimate.
And the design for this one has already been done, right?
There is a design has been done, but I think it's at a conceptual level, and we've got to do some further design work on it before it can be put out to bid. I believe that's correct. Am I right on working with that or no?
That is correct for the ferry dock and maintenance facility. So part of the next 45, as I say, 60 days, because of also the fall timeline with the FTA, we're putting all of the documentation together for the grant execution. And then from that grant execution, to talk about, when we were talking about that lapse sort of, it essentially reset, as soon as we execute, it resets your milestone clock so that now you're in active, you're basically starting your active construction, your AE, and on from there. And the fund, once the funds become available for execution, you're essentially creating a new service calendar. So to put everything together with the ferry document facility, because some of these documents have been so old, and then some of them, like working with the Army Corps of Engineers for this summer's permitting, that just came back to us in the last 45 days. The conveyance with the city of Savannah, the review appraisal and appraisal is under FTA concurrence right now. So even before we can execute the grant for a financial sense and then say go on, our timeline for construction, we have to get that FTA concurrence back, and then we'll finish up the actual physical conveyance of the city of Savannah property over to us. So that would be the deed plot recordation.
I think you're probably about 3 years out.
Okay.
On the document maintenance facility for the ferries.
So moving forward, it won't have to get the money back.
Absolutely. No, we've secured that now. On the paratransit maintenance facility, we are working with both the county and the city right now to determine what properties may exist that are already under public control of the city or county where the paratransit maintenance facility may be located. So that's still an in progress piece too. Remember that one was a year back.
There's a old garage behind on Eisenhower that the county has over near their tag office.
I think there's storm records.
Yeah.
Around the fence. Yeah. We will.
It's on Eisenhower.
So
and it's got the bays. It was some kind of garage.
Well, we just got an updated concept for what, based upon the amount of paratransit vehicles we have, the personnel we have, the level of service that we provide and so forth. We just got an updated concept design for what kind of space would we need, what size property would we need, what functionality does it need, and so forth. And we've been working with both the city manager and the county manager on what those opportunities may be for where that's located. So we'll keep you advised on that. I was looking to see if there was anything else up there that warranted some particular mention. That GDOT transit signal prioritization. I know we talked a little bit about that. That's going to be about $1 million project total. And again, that's one that GDOT is funding with 100% funding. Don't get those very often, so those are exciting. Right.
This is very impressive. I do want to say that. That's a lot of money.
Well, we are really excited and really proud, and No, you are too, so.
The last slide is just speaking a little bit more about our NPO grant submission, which we talked about a little bit already. These kind of come on an open call, on average about 18 months apart or so, pending funding availability for our regional level and transportation funds. We applied for 3 hybrid diesel buses following our state of good repair fleet replacement schedule as part of our transit asset management.
Thank you. And our last report under unit updates is CFO Cutter and our financial services update.
Good morning again, everyone. I'm going to take you through the financial activity for the month of August, and I will conclude with how earmarks and grants impact our current and available funding. For the month of August, our expenses exceeded our revenues. That's not abnormal for the month of August, typically because the transit tax revenue is significantly down. We call it a low revenue period. However, the expenses when compared to budget is lower than what the actual budget is. The graph is a comparison of actual versus budget, still in strong financial condition year to date. This slide, it shows the revenues by category. The highlighted block in yellow, it shows the special district transit tax being 6.6% of our revenue on the month of August. That's much less than what it typically is, and pretty primarily the reason why the revenue was a little less than expenses for the month of August.
And that's, again, just because of the change in the schedule of payment
Collections.
cuts.
Expenses by category, even with vacancies, salaries and wages and benefits is the most significant cost of our operating budget. Cash receipts, I mentioned briefly the special district taxes for the month of August. We received a little over $85,000. The paratransit funds, that is a prorated amount based upon the annual budget of $493,874. And the FTA grant assistance, that is the prorated amount for the annual amount of grant assistance. At the month end, we had an operating balance of 7.3. I want to remind the board to keep in mind the union contract has not been ratified to date. Also, we are struggling to gain local support for some huge capital expenses. And we are watching the money very carefully. The ferry boat IFB is due back in early October. There is a significant deficit in funding. With that, we are working with our community partners to come up with the local budget. The deficit is primarily due to the increase in cost of the ferry boat. It was originally projected at 1.6, 1.8. Now the cost is $3.95 million.
And one of the things, just for future practice as well is our past practice in project management has not included routinely updating cost estimates prior to grant applications, so that the opportunity to catch those cost increases in a more timely fashion and be able to avoid these kinds of deficit situations is now in place. It just wasn't in place at the time that these opportunities were proceeding. So I want you to have some confidence that while we do have a serious situation right now with regard to the parent funding, it is not a persistent issue. It's one that we have identified a solution and have already implemented.
Okay, this slide pretty much talks about revenues and expenses and how the actual compares to budget. Is really self-explanatory. It's showing our passenger fares are up, our agency revenue is up, the transit tax collection for the month is significantly down in comparison to budget, and our grant revenue is slightly below budget. On the expense side, the area that's over budget is materials and supplies, and that's primarily due to the marine services issues with the sinkhole and some supplies and materials that they had that was not necessarily budgeted. This is what it looks like, the projected cash balance through the year. The actual for July and August is represented in blue, and the for September for June is projected in the golden. Our new system reporting, and this is very, very important as we monitor and control spending. Each month, departments are now getting budget reports that shows them what they have left to spend in each category. In addition to that, there has been internal controls implemented that does not allow any department to go over the budgeted amount without a justification and or approval process. So we're really trying to do a better job with monitoring and making the budget process effective. What's coming? The full scope management review for the period July 1, 2019 through June 30, 2021 is over. The response to the findings were submitted last week, and they will be finalizing the report. When the report gets back, it will be shared with the board. The electric bus FTA grant, which we have an earmark for, moving forward with that, waiting on notification. Policy updates. The CEO has challenged each chief with a review of current policies and making updates. Those are due in December of this year. Procurement, project management, a compliance division is funded within the 23 budget, and we will be recruiting for those positions. Also, project management positions were funded within the FY23 budget. These are all areas that we receive advisory comments from the FMO, and wanted to point them out so that the board could see that we are moving towards addressing all of those issues.
We also, I've mentioned here too, under procurement project management, we also have a draft circulating amongst our executive team right now, the project management manual for CAT. We have not had one in the past, but put one in place that again, will put all those best practices and will give not only our staff who is working on projects and delivering projects on time, on budget, but also give any consultants that are working with us. So we're all working in a consistent manner towards the CAP performance objectives attached to project management.
Our fiscal year 22 financial audit is in progress and coming to completion. Once it's done, representation from Malden and Jenkins will come before the board to present its findings. Union negotiations is still out there, and of course, it will have a significant impact on our operating fund balance once ratified. The RFP for on-call services are, the proposals are due in the end of September, and the IFP is proposals due October 31st. Vacancies by department as of the end of August are provided on the chart above, broken down by department, full-time versus part-time. Some of the vacancies, particularly in finance, are newly funded positions for which we are recruiting for. Total vacancies 64 as of the month of August. There has been quite a bit of conversation about grants and movement and non-movement. I wanted to clarify, because of significant cost increases and limited local match funding, grants are not necessarily moving as quickly as they should. When earmarks are awarded, there is a process that's attached to that, wherein it has to be voted on, awarded, and then executed. We do not have privy to funds until grants are executed, earmarks are executed. It does show that we are being very, very aggressive in looking for dollars to support and address CAT's capital needs. Our SPLOST dollars, the majority of SPLOST $7 have been already committed. The last update, the SPLOST 7 monies that are unrestricted is only $4 million. What we have facing us this year, next year, and year beyond, we have to replace these buses. And to replace the buses, even though we may get grants, we have to have a local match of 20% to replace our buses. When we began to prepare for the FY24 budget, I'm going to be recommending that the board considers a capital fund reserve to help us plan for the replacement of buses. It's a critical need, and we really need to move forward with that, or we will be unable to provide fixed route services. The fleet is old.
We have that condition generally across all of our services, marine services, and our surface transportation services. So the seriousness with which CFO Cutter is underscoring the practice that we've got to have both of good diligence and mindfulness around what grant applications we pursue, when we pursue them. Our readiness to accept the responsibility of those grants with match and with project management, including good cost estimates and all those sorts of things. But our overall fleet is really in, if you look at it in its whole, is really in a state of much needed repairs and replacement. So we're going to be very diligent about making sure that our recommendations still reflect that. All right, are there any other questions or comments? With that, Chairman, I'll turn it back over to you for all the business. I guess I'll take this into executive session.
Thank you, ma'am. I want to thank the staff for updating us on this information, always much needed. At this time, we'll want to take a motion to go into executive session. Good. Second.
Take the purpose.
We're going to take a special session today to be discuss human resources. Personnel matters.
Possible attorney-client communication.
Take a motion in a second.
Yes.
I'll make the motion. I'll second. I didn't know whether y'all wanted to take lunch while
We can take up 5 minutes.
Take 5 minutes. Let's take a-
Get lunch, you do it during. I love
Virtual community, we're getting ready to go into an executive session.
It was nice meeting you.
I'm gonna go ahead and start the breakout room.
Still ringing. Maybe you
You can't see that.
I know, but I want to see this simply.
I'll say, no, I'll say, we're back to. Thank you. That was
With the green?
Yeah. Go ahead and do it.
We're not stopping yet.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Congratulations.
I appreciate that.
Bevel,
Yes, sir.
did you understand my question?
I did. So form and person, I think, Mr. Andrew, do you have the information? Where?
I'm asking about-
They're.
You know, you go up there and and what I'm worried about. What you can't do is figure out action. It's not about it. Unfortunately.
We initially decided to look at the government expire. Yeah. Yeah.
How long was it? I had a friend of mine, she decided probably
The chairman.
25 years.
Not basing it on.
I went I was with their trans, I think, that we died, so love their trans, like how cheapest in the States, that's why.
Right.
But not after.
Great military transit, yeah. Very. Yep, I've got some friends, that was at GTA for some time, there. Got some friends over at Raleigh, A little all over, but a lot of my people.
Oh, I was trying to.
Okay, we should have beat y'all then in the first game of the season, but we won't talk about that. So.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
I told her that thing on, you know, Thursday.
Hey, how are you?
Back?
We are back live.
Thank you. I'd like to note that there was no action or any votes taken in executive session. This time going on the old business, I would like to get a motion in a second to take a vote on human resources. Human resources support.
I'll make a motion to do so.
I say. I'm sorry about that. Yes, sir. Director Emerson,
Yes.
Director Odell,
Yes.
Director Stone,
Yes.
Director Lockett. Yes, okay, thank you, Director Lockett. Director Adams,
Yes.
Director Robinson,
Yes.
Director Leggett, not present for the vote. Director Taylor, not present for the vote. And Chairman Coe,
Yes,
Chairman, motion passed.
thank you. This time, do we have any further questions, comments about today's session? Right, yes. Thank everybody for a great meeting today.
Y'all stay safe.
Good, adjourn this meeting. Next meeting, October 25th.
Oh, yeah, go.
Yes.
Do this.
Oh, gee.
You should.
Well, I'll-
He was on top of it. You got a really excellent speech. That's very cool. Early morning.
Yeah, I don't know. Well.
Well, I think you'd be great at it. Get that coffee.
Yeah. That's my boy, good.
I'll see you later. Yeah.
Thank y'all. Appreciate it.
Bye.